we're still in quarantine. It's awful. I am not a fan. Not a fan. But the markets are still moving. So let's talk about that, shall we? So if you guys remember from my last video, this is a graph of what the market movement could look like. So obviously this is market movement downward. But this is, the potential market movement upward. So hopefully we have a V recovery. We do not want an L recovery. This is the bottom of the market, and I still feel like we've bottomed out. But the markets are pushing, trying to go upward. We kind of keep staying in this range. We're not at the bottom, but we're certainly not moving much past kind of this point here. So, we take 2 steps forward, 1 step back, 2 steps forward, 3 steps back. So we just keep kind of, again, just kind of staying in this range right now. And there's a whole host of reasons why the markets are moving and what's causing the markets to kind of stay in that range. And of course, largely it's because of the coronavirus. Any information about the coronavirus causes the markets to move. If there's new testing, new data, all of that, new policies, it all affects it. Right now, though, the biggest market mover is oil. So if you guys remember from a while back, I did an oil video. And if you guys haven't seen it, you guys can go ahead and scroll through my list of videos and it's there. But let me give you a quick rundown of that. Oil has been in the past a big economic indicator. So if there's a high demand for oil, that means there's usually high economic activity. If there's low demand for oil, that usually means there's low economic activity. And that really held true until 2008. So if you guys remember, gas prices were astronomically high. On average, the gas price was, $4+ a gallon, which was incredibly painful. And painful enough that the US consumer, and in fact, a lot of the consumers worldwide, changed their behavior because of it. We demanded more fuel efficiency. Car companies like Tesla came out, and then because of him, because of Elon Musk, with Tesla, all major car manufacturing companies, created some sort of electric hybrid. We increased the use of mass transit. There was just a whole bunch that happened that caused consumer behavior to change. And so we've seen something similar to this with what's happening with the demand for oil back in 2015 and 2016. So at the end of 2015, 2016, there was a huge glut of oil. Now, it was very similar to what's happening now. Everybody thought, there's a lack of economic activity, like we're going to go into recession, all this stuff. And that was not the case. It was just simply for the fact that we had changed our consumption behavior from 2008 to 2015. Now, from 2015 to now, we've continued to steadily but slowly change our consumption behavior on oil. But now it's just been compounded by the fact that coronavirus has caused stay at home or stay in place or stay in shelter orders across the globe. And so people are restricted in their movements, which means that they're not going to be driving around a whole bunch. And so there's huge excess supply and not a lot of demand, which is why there's a glut of oil. So, and of course, right now there is definitely a slowdown in economic activity because people are, forced to stay home. They're restricted to stay home. So if they can't go work, then obviously there's going to be a slowdown of economic activity. That's pretty simple logic. Anyway, so we see that happening right now. The oil companies and the gasoline companies, they've, they were a really big indicator of economic activity. They no longer are as powerful of an indicator as they used to be, simply for the fact that we changed our consumption behavior. Now, if the oil and gas companies are not careful, this whole situation is going to cause us to change our consumption behavior again. And that is, so what I say by that is that you've got some, oil companies and gas companies that are trying to keep that price point higher. Even though there is almost no demand for it, they keep trying to push that price point higher, trying to make a profit. And if they keep pushing it, keeping it higher than they should, then it's going to cause consumption behavior to change again, because we're not going to be happy about having to pay a higher price. When price per barrel has gone to zero, and of course it's rebounded back since, but it's really low and gas prices haven't come down, that consumers are going to catch on, and we don't like it. And they kind of are in that old mentality of how to make a profit. So the great question of how to make a profit has been around for a long time. But Amazon, Walmart, Google, and Facebook, all these companies have shown you how you make a profit. They've laid that question to rest. And the way you do it is you decrease the price and increase the volume of consumers. Look at Facebook. It's free. So they have a ton of market share, but then they sell ad space. So it's free to the consumer. And so they have a huge market share and they're making tons of profit. The more established companies are still under the old mentality of, well, you make profit by having high prices even if you decrease the volume. And that is just not the case anymore. And so they're kind of holding on to that mentality. And again, if they keep this up, they're going to end up kind of irking the consumers, and we'll just change our behavior again. If you push us to a high enough price point, we will change our behavior. It's not often, and it's really not it's not a low price point. It's a pretty high price point for consumers to change their behaviors. But if you hit it, we'll do it. And so I feel like the oil companies and the gas companies aren't quite understanding that there's no demand for them right now. And in fact, there's a huge push to get rid of them altogether. If they want to stick around, they need to lower those prices for consumers, or else we just won't use them. So there's a quick summary of the oil situation going on. Don't be alarmed. It's not a big deal. Right now, prices of everything need to be lower because there's definitely some price gouging going on from the grocery stores and retail stores that are still open. When you're paying like $30 for a package of toilet paper, you can't tell me that there is some price gouging. And so I know there's high demand for it, but it's not like, it's pretty easy for them to manufacture this. There's definitely just price gouging going on. But that's why I say, prices need to be low right now. So oil prices being low, that's not necessarily a bad thing, because all goods have to be transported from, the coastlines in. And so if the cost of gas and cost of transportation is lower, then that's less cost to the consumer. And right now we need that because we have 22 million Americans that are out of jobs. This is, oh my gosh, the cost of this virus it's going to be so much more than people really anticipate or realize. You're not talking about just the loss of lives. Don't get me wrong. The loss of life is never, it's always sad. It's never okay. But you're talking millions upon millions of people being pushed into poverty and homelessness. And a lot of people, for some reason, are under the thought process, hey, these small businesses closed, like they're only closed for a month, they'll come back and they'll just reopen the doors and all these jobs will be back. No, that is not how this works. You have a lot of these businesses that are closing and they can't afford to come back, which means those jobs are also gone. And people going into poverty and homelessness, people who are pushed into poverty and homelessness, they don't just bounce back. That is not something that happens. So when all these people are like, oh, we can just shut down the economy and we'll just open it back up and all these people will get their jobs back, and people who are pushed into poverty and homelessness, so they'll just get back on their feet. No, that is not how this works. And so this is a huge concern. um, and the bailouts that the government has passed, they're worthless. They're so worthless, I can't even tell you. So the first $2.2 trillion bailout that was sent out, 346 billion were given to small businesses, which was tapped out within the first week that it was, initiated. 500 billion to big corporations. Why? Why are we giving more money to big corporations? They have access to capital. They have, access to lines of credit. They have lines of capital or means of capital with, if they're publicly traded, they can go ahead and issue new stock to the public. You've got, big corporations that are private corporations. They can also issue more stock. Small businesses don't have these lines of capital available to them. So why are we giving a bigger portion of the pie to the big corporations as opposed to the small businesses? Why? And that first bailout was worthless, which is why they've had to do another bailout. Now this other bailout is 480, but it doesn't go just to small businesses. It goes to hospitals. It goes to testing. So small businesses are still getting screwed. So the reason that I advocate so big for small businesses is because you have to remember the vast majority of Americans are employed by small businesses. And so if they go under, it's going to have devastating effects. You have to remember these are people's livelihoods that are disappearing. And that stimulus check is not going to be enough to keep people in their homes. And so if you guys remember from my last video, there's a lot of people who are what's called rent burdened because, a big chunk of their income goes to rent, goes to mortgage. And so for their shelter, for their home. And so when they're not making enough money to make those payments, what do you think is going to happen? So again, this was poorly thought out. They keep Congress keeps throwing money at this, thinking they can just bury the problem under money and people are just going to be happy about this. No, they're not. This is affecting people's lives. And I feel like, if they're willing to shut down the economy, then Congress shouldn't get paid because Americans aren't getting paid either. So they shouldn't get paid. I think that's fair. I think that's totally fair. So that should be a thing. But the bailouts, right now we continue to be kind of taking the leading charge of stimulus packages, which puts our currency, in the toilet right now because we keep just spending and spending and spending. And we're going to be left with high inflation. So basically all of the pay increases that have happened in the last couple of years, where people are getting increase in pay. So they've gotten an increase in pay and, inflation was a little more tame. Well, if we keep decreasing the value of our dollar, inflation is going to go up and it's going to just eat away that whole increase in pay. So we're just going to be left with high inflation. So these are the things that people really need to take into consideration when we're looking at policies, trying to address the virus situation. There is no simple answer for this, but there are better solutions than others, and Congress really needs to pay attention to that. And they're just not. They're just thinking everybody's just going to be kind of simple-minded and be like, oh, hey, if we just throw money at this and give you guys money, you guys will be happy. No, that's not going to keep people from being kicked out of their homes, or having to decide, do I pay for groceries or do I pay for my rent? So it's got serious ramifications, and people really need to remember that when there's a lot of rhetoric about reopen the economy, it's not about just money. You're talking about people's lives here, and so we've got to remember that when Congress is talking about all these ridiculous stimulus plans, and they're worthless. They are not going to make a dent in the problem at all. And so they really need to sit down and think of a better way to come up with how to address this issue. And so, like I said in my last video, they could have really just said, hey, look, we're going to just freeze all rents for the next few months until this gets worked out. And for small landowners, we're going to give you guys, stimulus for that and help you guys out with that. But big corporations, nope, you don't need it because they should be able to survive it. And that should be that. I mean, pretty simple. And that would help to prevent people from being kicked into the streets. But again, Congress they're not really thinking this through. They, as always, because it's an election year, are just making it into a political point, and they're really not helping the American people. So we should be demanding more from, our Congress people. And I encourage you guys to reach out to them and complain that they should not be getting paid. If Americans aren't getting paid, then they shouldn't be getting paid either, since they've been so quick to close down and demand, what businesses are essential and which ones are not. If they're going to close everyone else down, then they shouldn't get paid either. So anyways, there's my video for the day. The markets will keep moving. And again, if you're in the accumulation phase, this is a great time for you to, look at, trying to get some gains. If you're in the distribution phase, of course, you want to try to mitigate the risk as much as possible. And as always, if you guys have any questions, let me know in the comment section below. Hit that subscribe button, and I will talk with you guys later.